Well, good evening, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day to you.
And so the legal voters of the Regional Technical School District are hereby warned to meet at the Hannaford Career Center, Middlebury, Vermont, in said district on February 14, 2018 at 7 p.m. to transact and vote on the following business. Article 1, to elect the following officers, a moderator, a treasurer, and a clerk. I'll turn the meeting over to Jason for the elections.
I know it's simple, but I'll do it anyway.
All right, do we have a nomination for moderator?
Nominate Dick Poe.
Do we have any additional nominations? All right, do we have any nominations for treasurer? Do we have any additional nominations? All right, hearing none. Do we have a nomination for clerk?
Nominate Linda Barrett.
Okay. Do we have any additional nominations? Hearing none, I move to close nominations and to have the clerk cast one vote for the slate of officers. Turn it back over to Dick.
Article 2, to hear and act upon the reports of the treasurer and auditors of the district. What's your pleasure on Article 2?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Article 2. Discussion.
Will there be a presentation of any part of the budget?
After the annual meeting, there'll be a budget discussion.
We did have our auditing report at the last board meeting, correct, for the FY17 district, FY17 school year, and that was a very clean audit. I don't know if that's anything further that we need to say about that particular item, but.
Further discussion? If not, all those in favor of adopting Article 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You have adopted Article 2. Article 3, to see if the voters of said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to borrow money pending receipt of payment from member districts by the issuance of its notes or orders payable not later than 1 year from date for the purpose of paying the sum approved by the voters.
Move to approve Article 3.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Discussion on Article 3? If there is no discussion, those in favor of adopting Article 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 3. Article 4, to see if the voters of the district will vote to pay a stipend to each voting member of the board of directors not to exceed $600 per member per year. Stipend prorated based upon number of warned meetings attended. Pleasure on Article 4.
Move to approve Article 4.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on Article 4.
How long has it been at this level?
My recollection is about 3 years now.
No, it's been longer than that.
Has it been longer than that?
I believe it's at least 7, but I can't tell you for sure.
Just want to be sure that you feel it's adequate.
I think it's adequate as a board of directors. Thank you for asking, though.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on Article 4? If not, those in favor of adopting Article 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 4. Article 5, to see if the voters of the said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to place $25,000 of the fiscal year 17 unreserved fund balance in the building and equipment reserve fund.
Move that article.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on Article 5. If there is no discussion, those in favor of adopting Article 5, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 5. Article 6, to see if the voters of said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to use funds in the Building and Equipment Reserve Fund for capital improvements and program equipment. Motion to adopt Article 6. It's been moved,
Second.
seconded. Discussion on Article 6.
Will you be defining what they are under your budget discussion?
Under the budget discussion for next year, no, but we can do the report from the last Building and Equipment Reserve Fund meeting and talk about the articles that are, the items that are already being identified. We have ideas about the allocation of the 25,000 which would go towards other things, but those have not yet been fully identified.
They haven't been identified yet? Okay, that's the answer. Okay.
And I should also point out that it's probably the lowest amount of money that's been asked to be put in that reserve fund
Right.
in my history of being in part of the Career Center. Yeah.
That fund is used for maintenance and upkeep that goes beyond what we can do in terms of our operating budget, and so that's what helps us to be able to do capital improvements.
So you made a decision to keep it as low as possible, just to keep your budget manageable this year, is that it?
To keep it manageable, and then also, if you'll notice in Article 8, I believe it is, we're asking to create another reserve fund. And so that's part of the equation as
Part
well.
of it, okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
Three pieces to our surplus. Building and Equipment Reserve Fund, the money that we're moving into the fund that we're going to be creating. And third, the money that's going back to voters, which you'll see in the budget.
Okay.
Further discussion on Article 6. If not, those in favor of adopting Article 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 6. Article 7, to see if the voters of said district will authorize the board to create a health reserve fund for the board to pay obligations based on the new health reimbursement agreement.
So moved.
And second that.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on Article 7. If there's no discussion, those in favor of adopting Article 7, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You have adopted Article 7. Article 8, to see if the voters of said district will vote to authorize its board of directors to place $50,000 of the FY17 reserve in the Health Reserve Fund. Moved,
Second?
seconded. Discussion.
So again, you're doing that just to buffer your health costs?
Right, this is something new that came about through the most recent bargaining agreement, and we believe that by placing $50,000 into a reserve fund covers our liability that may occur over the course of the next fiscal year in terms of our obligation to covering employees with health reimbursement. And I think you'll see this, continue to occur in each year to replace that fund. That fund may increase or decrease over the years, but this is our best estimate in terms of what we think is needed to cover it, and that's the $50,000.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on Article 8. If not, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You've adopted Article 8. Article 9, to do any other business proper to come before said meeting.
Laura.
Is this an opportunity to ask about the survey results? Or, I mean, would you be speaking to any other?
Which survey are we talking about?
The survey that was done about the future programming that could be considered at the Hannaford Career Center? There was a survey that we,
That's correct. We haven't compiled all of those results. We have looked at them a little bit internally, but we don't have the final determination. What I can say is that there are a couple of programs that we are looking at with great interest. One is, just came up at the board meeting, is offering a computer science principles class that would be within the current operating budget. The next is looking at the building trades, which is a longer process. We had a building trades program several years ago, and there are several items under discussion in terms of how to reinvigorate that. The first step in that process has been for the adult tech ed program to offer a variety of classes that would be relevant to people interested in building trades. And then there are other items that have popped up that we are looking at internally, but we haven't done a full analysis of that yet. We were very impressed with the return rate in terms of members of the community providing us with that input, but we haven't had a chance to digest that and make a formal presentation, but we'll be doing that shortly, probably within the month.
okay. Any other highlights about your next year in terms? Or are you going to get to that later in your discussion?
Highlights and, well, at this point, we're not adding any additional programs, with the exception of
Computer science.
computer science that we were
Of course,
in the
right.
process of putting forth.
And then maybe clinics in the adult ed.
Yeah, and the adult ed is a moving target. Our adult ed coordinator, adds things, removes things based on need.
But the process, as I explained earlier in the regular monthly meeting of the district board, the process for adding classes or programs is rather time-consuming and complex because it falls under state statute in terms of we have to apply to the Agency of Education for authorization to do that, and it has to meet a certain set of criteria, which requires one, meeting with an advisory board to get their approval, presenting the information on what we're planning or looking at doing to our sending schools, and then ultimately submitting a proposal and an application to AOE, having checked off about 19 items on a statutory list for approval, and then we can get that taken care of. But what I have said, we are looking intently at building trades, and we're looking at the computer science principles as something that is manageable within our staffing configuration right now and within the scope of our training possibilities. So the other things we would have to put on a prioritized list, which we haven't yet had the opportunity to develop. So we're looking at pulling down the low-hanging fruit. We're also talking with some business and industry leaders about the integration of our training with some of their work. We're also looking at adult ed, possibly being able to respond to some of the industry, particularly those who are interested in the Vermont Talent Pipeline, some of those the types of courses that we could offer through adult ed that would meet those needs within the county.
Okay. Well, I read with interest the story about the Career Center and the reference to the makerspace.
Correct.
So I think that's exciting. I also think it's exciting that the Career Center is a resource for skill development for all ages, and that you make the facility available for clinics as they arise. They don't have to come just under adult ed, but it's available as a resource here. I think it's a really important resource, one of growing importance, actually.
And that's one of the things that's one of the reasons that we have promoted this so widely, that we're looking for the opportunity to generate that interest and to find out, once again, surveying the makers of themselves specifically about what would help benefit them. Once again, we'll run that through our adult ed program for a variety of legal reasons. And then as we explore how we can make the facility more widely available, because we have a lot of heavy labs that have very specific industry and state health and safety requirements that we have to comply with. So our opportunity to have both an open house and a maker fair at the same time is to bring as many people in the community to see what we have and to take advantage of those opportunities wherever they fall along the continuum, whether that's secondary education, whether that's post-secondary education, or whether that's community interest. So we're working to put all of those three tiers together, and hope to have more information later in the spring and potentially next year for that.
I actually have a question for Laura. Laura, is there still a meeting between the town, select board and the schools in terms of a town school committee?
There is.
I wonder if maybe we shouldn't be involved with that.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we can, reference this as a way to get involved with that and have you get in touch with, Laura or the town select board at some
Yeah.
point, because.
We can exchange contact information.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be really good. So recently, the Addison County Solid Waste Management District contacted me about hosting a repair cafe, which is technical skill for doing minor repairs. And that helps them reduce things going into landfill. It gives people skill, and they're looking for a site for that. So I recommended that they approach the Career Center about that. I think it would be a good venue for things like that, so you might hear from them about that.
I got a call from Sarah today.
Oh, good, okay. Well, that happened.
Great.
Well, quickly.
There you go.
But,
A
the
lot of
other
things
thing
happen.
that we see is like in the area of protective services, like
Yep.
police and firemen, we're seeing a decline in volunteers and a need for more exposure to careers. So even if you're not offering programming, if you would consider career fairs or something, that shows, people the possibility of different career options. And then as you can incorporate more programming, great, but meanwhile, just shining a light on some of these professions could be really helpful. It's really needed.
We've certainly been down that path before. We had a career and protective services program at one point.
I knew you did. Do you do a career fair?
We
No.
do 2 open houses throughout the year to highlight what we're offering, but not technically a career fair. No.
But who knows, that could be the next
Right.
item on our initiative agenda.
That's right.
One of the things we're working on as a board is community outreach, and how to shine the spotlight on the Career Center and bring all the players to the table to talk about what we're doing here.
Yeah, you've got like a great facility, and the food co-op has found you, and so what is the process for people to start a program at the Career Center if they wanted to offer something, even if it's like a one-day clinic on a Saturday?
That's through adult ed.
Through adult.
That would be contacting Len Schmidt, and he will help people set that up. That's the most popular vehicle for accessing that for adult learners.
Or you just call 1-800 the Career Center and you get our superintendent and he'll direct you.
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome.
And the Maker Fair is tomorrow at the open house?
That's right, we're holding them concurrently. We're hoping that it will attract people along the spectrum, regardless of what their interest is. If they want to be creative and see what the possibilities are, to come and join us. We'll have raffle prizes. We'll be collecting email addresses if people want to know more about us and put you on the trade distribution. We have a very colorful newsletter that goes out twice a week, for which I have to get my article written this week, so I gotta get moving on that. we'll have a variety of demonstrations, both by students as well as by makers, and we're hoping that it'll be exciting, and people will let us know how we can help advance their interest in makerism, or in creativity, or in pursuing interests of whatever size and color.
So may I
Sure.
also offer another idea?
Absolutely.
So I love the open house, and I love the newsletter. You know, those are really important outreach events. And I think you have another opportunity to do outreach with the mailer that goes out about this annual meeting. Like, spiff it up, you know, like, and make it say something more than you're having a meeting. And maybe, because now you have this coincidence of the open house being on the heels of the annual meeting, I don't know if you would ever consider kind of combining them as a way of attracting people. So I don't know how that happened this particular year, that things fell where they did. And anyway, something maybe to think about for the future, like, just could be really helpful.
We were hoping that the timing of this might generate a little bit more interest, because we had considered the idea. I think it was the outreach committee, the community outreach committee, that toyed with the idea. But knowing that open house was a big event, the Maker Fair was a brand new event, and trying to pull off an annual meeting at the same time was something that we thought was just a little bit too ambitious.
We felt it was going to be a distraction to both of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, people come to the annual meeting for a different, the annual meeting typically is more mechanical in nature than, you know, an open house. And trying to do an open, while we're doing the open house, pulling the superintendent and teachers into an annual meeting would be counterproductive to that process, where we're trying to introduce the programs, not just the center, but the programs, you know, to incoming students and parents.
So your open house ends at 7, right? And your
Yes.
annual meeting starts at 7, so that wouldn't work?
There's a lot of work that goes on cleaning up and, you know,
Yeah.
afterwards. You're trying to cram. We were trying to cram too much into one night. That's why we opted not to do that. So,
Okay.
but it was something that was entertaining. We weighed several different options.
But maybe there's something to do with your mailer, and certainly with your newsletter. You know, I like,
I
The
written
postcard
note.
can be dressed up a little more.
right, and you could promote both, you know, your open house and your annual meeting on it, and something else, you know, that just are neat facts.
I totally agree. I think we missed an opportunity to promote both the open house
You
and
have
our
a
annual
neat
meeting.
visual communication program.
Right.
I think we'll look in-house next year for a better way to do that.
That's a great idea, because the way you present your information at annual meeting does say something about who you are and what you can expect. So we'll certainly take that.
You could
under
still keep it
advisement.
affordable. It could still be a postcard, but maybe a slightly larger one.
Yep.
Good idea. Thanks, Laura.
Any other business? Will we come under Article 9? In that case, the meeting will now be recessed to March 6, 2018, on which date member district voters are further warned to vote on the article listed below by an Australian ballot at their respective polling places. Article 10. Shall the voters of the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District approve the school board to expend $3,468,524, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending at the Patricia A. Hannaford Career Center to be $21,466 per full-time equivalent student. The projected spending per full-time equivalent student is 6.47% higher than spending for the current year. Is there a motion to recess?
So move.
So moved Seconded? Those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, I will now turn the meeting over to Jason, who will conduct the budget hearing.
All right, the legal voters and residents of the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District are further warned and notified that an informational meeting will be held on the above listed Australian ballot article on Wednesday, February 14th, 2018, at the Hannaford Career Center in the town of Middlebury, Vermont. Immediately following the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District's annual meeting, which shall begin at 7 p.m. So I'm going to call this budget hearing to order. I'm going to turn it over to Dana Peterson, our superintendent, to do his budget presentation.
Can you log back in?
After the presentation, we'll open up for questions.
Good evening, everyone. This evening, I'm going to take about 10 minutes to just do a brief overview of our budget and entertain any questions you might have. So just a little bit about my background. I'm a longtime educator in Vermont, and I have both middle school and high school experience. I've also done a good bit of work in international travel, education, and learning experiences. And I came to the Career Center as a result of my interest in connecting academic and technical learning. So our budget for FY19 school year is $3,468,534. And that amount is actually the lowest in the last 7 years. And it represents a $14,025 decrease from last year's expenditures, which is just shy of 0.5% lower than our expenses for last year. Our projected per pupil spending, which you've already seen in terms of $21,466, is broken down the following way. We have an estimated tuition per FTE of $12,899. That is what gets assessed to each of our sending towns for each full-time equivalent student. Last year, in contrast, for FY18, the amount was $11,926. Difference is $963 or 8.16% change. The local assessments are the exact same as the estimated per pupil FTE. Tuition from the state is $8,567 as calculated by AOE. Last year it was $8,236. That's a $331 increase or 4.02% change. And that gives us our total tuition cost for the Career Center at $21,466. Last year, by comparison, was $20,162 or $1,300 difference, which is 6.47% change over last year. The historical tuitions I decided to put up here so that people would have some point of comparison. So in addition to the $21,466 for next year and the $20,162, you have here the tuition rates for the last 7 years. And you can see the difference, the change in difference from year to year in your second column. And the percentage change based on our FTEs. The FTEs are really our driving factor in terms of tuition cost, and those FTEs are identified on a 6-semester average. So they are not real students. It's actually a trailing average, and the students are paid for previous years. So that 6-semester average trails back 3 years. Our projected FTEs for next year, 127,58. That's already been calculated and submitted to AOE. That is the number that generates our per pupil cost at $21,466. You also have the 6-semester average for the last 7 years as well. Capacity and fixed costs. Here at the Career Center, programs are singular. Each instructor is a program. If we cut an instructor, we cut a program, and we also cut opportunities for students. We currently have approximately 30% capacity for additional students center-wide. That may vary from program to program. Some programs may only have 10%, but other programs may have 40%. So we do have additional capacity for having more students in our programs. Why is that important? Because when we're looking at calculating the cost per pupil and the per pupil expense ratio, I have a little sample. Say our cost was $10,000 and we had 100 students split between 3 schools. One school has 40 students, one has 30, and another has 30. Then your per pupil cost, 10,000 divided by 100 is $100. And so our per pupil cost would be $100. One school would pay $4,000. One school would pay, and 2 schools would pay $3,000. For those who are more visually oriented, I have this broken down, and there's a mistake on here. This should be 4,000, not 3,000. The orange pie. The others just show you that each one of those represents 30%, 30%, and then 40%. Take that same fixed cost of $10,000, and let's say now that we have an increase of 10% in our per pupil population. Instead of having 40 students, one school now has 44, and 2 have 33. That means we have 110 students as opposed to 100 students, and all of a sudden our per pupil cost drops to $90.91 per student, dropping our per pupil cost by 10%. Once again, we would have 2 schools with $3,000 in terms of their total cost, and one with $4,000. There's a typo there as well. So, in other words, the entire cost is borne. Oops, which way did I go? The entire cost isn't going to change, but our per pupil cost does change as a result of the number of students that we have in our center. We have additional capacity, and we love to serve more kids. We are working collaboratively with all of our sending schools to coordinate on proficiency attainment, and we're having conversations currently at the admin and the teacher level on coordinating curriculum and seeing how we can dovetail with our the variety of sending schools that we have in order to be able to serve more students in our programming and thereby reduce our overall per pupil cost. Little public service announcement, it's already been mentioned, but tomorrow, Thursday, February 15th, from 4 to 7, we have our open house. I'd like to extend an invitation to anybody who's out there listening to come and join us to see what we have to offer. And I have a video that I'd like to play, so I'm going to end the presentation, play the video, and then open it up for discussion.
To the shop, to the field, to the studio, to the classroom, to the community. Wherever you want to go, chart a course for the future that starts at the Hannaford Career Center. At Hannaford Career Center, you'll learn the skills you need for long-term success in your career, college, and beyond. Not sure if the Career Center is right for you? Think again. With so many opportunities, all you need is to find the one that's right for you. So where do you fit in? Get in touch today, because if you're thinking about your future, you're already thinking Hannaford Career Center.
Okay, does everybody have an annual report? And I'd be happy to entertain any questions. I can also put a summary up.
Yeah, if you'd throw that up.
Yep. Give me 1 second.
Are any additional copies available?
There's one more.
Here you go.
Give me 1 second.
I do have a question about
Yep.
publicity and marketing. This is, I guess, line 2434, page 12,
Okay.
and 35. So how would you determine your allocations there? I see you reduce them. It feels like you want to be going in the other direction with publicity. So I'm curious about that, how you arrived at that.
As we went through the budget process, each department made certain recommendations, and we were looking at containing our budget costs. And if you look at the total expenditures for FY 17, we were under budget by about a third. And so the presentation was that reasonably the amount could be lowered a little bit and still be within our range for meeting our marketing targets, I think. So we were trying to do due diligence to all of our departments and making sure that we were responsible in terms of what we wanted to achieve for budget goals, as well as
Okay.
nope. Listen. So I have up here a demonstration. I can give you a copy if you'd like. Here is just a very brief overview looked at a little differently than in the budget. So we have our salaries. You can see that the overall salaries were up by 4.5%.
Could you please zoom?
Good.
A little more if you could. Thank you.
So overall salaries were up by 4.5%. Those are all of the professional staff. Then we have support staff that were up a total of 6.1%. Health insurance ended up being down by 18.84%. A lot of that was found in health insurance that was no longer current in terms of what employees were taking. So those plans were adjusted. Some of it was a conversion over to the new plan, but most of it was found in savings that were not being utilized as a result of change status. Social Security also indexed to the salaries, up 3.9%. On our life insurance, we had a drop of 5%. That was mostly due to changes in the, we had a change in company that ended up having net savings for most of our plans. Dental insurance also, we got good news that it was down about 2%. And as a result of some of the changes, we netted a 3.64% decrease there. Disability insurance, again, we had a new provider, and it resulted in a significant savings in terms of disability insurance. Our programs, that's the next area that I have up here. Subtotal for all of our technical programs were down 2.85%. All of the staff participated in a pretty rigorous examination of programming costs and expenses, and they came in with a significant amount of savings in certain areas. So total programs down about $4,000. When we looked at the subtotal for general services and facilities, we were able to realize $17,000 on a budget of about $635,000. That was down 2.72%. As you can see, a large portion of that was saved in both our operations and maintenance of North Campus and Main Campus, a total of $19,300, almost $20,000, mostly realized as a result of conversion to natural gas from our previous heating. Business office was up a little bit. That's as a result of conversion to being compliant with auditor's request in terms of adding additional software to our tracking for the budget and all of the accounts that we're responsible for reporting on. And then interest and debt service was down $7,500 or 4.86%. Once again, up at the top, you have our total budget for FY18 at $3,482,549 and $3,468,524 for a savings of $14,025, or just shy of 0.5%.
Can I ask a dumb question?
No questions, dumb questions.
I don't know, when it comes to finances. So you're comparing it to the budget, but not actual figures for this year, correct?
We don't have our actual figures.
Right, so,
right.
So
we're
those are
comparing
all,
the budget.
those changes, everything's projected, right, in terms of what your change is going to be. It could change is what I'm asking, I guess, your projections.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because
I just-
like you said, the numbers for this year
Yeah.
we
Right.
won't have the actual audited numbers for this year until February of next year. So
Right, and we won't stop spending until June 30th.
Right.
So I guess
yeah.
We're comparing budget to budget.
but that's what I wanted to be, okay.
Although, if you look at FY 17 actuals, that's $3,401,000. And that is 81,000 below the projected budget for,
Previous.
projected budget for this year.
17-18.
For 17-18.
Right.
And that was below, the budget. There was about $115,000. That's why we have made those designations for the reserve funds, returning $40,000 and some change to the taxpayers as tax relief, which appears on which page is that, Jason, in the book?
I was looking for it earlier, and I thought I found it.
I know, yeah, I've been through this several times, but let me find it.
Like when you
It's a-
mentioned reductions in dental, is that a contracted amount for the year, so you know that
Yes,
for
we
sure?
know that for sure. Yep.
Okay. So
Well, I mean, for sure. Barring any
Nothing for
changes,
sure.
right.
Right.
I mean, in terms of, those are the contracted obligations that we know about.
Okay.
Okay, so if somebody changed, if we had an employee leave or
Change it.
come on, yeah, it could change that.
To answer your question, if you go to page 8,
Yep. that's And everybody should have an inserted or a stapled page 8. If you don't, I have another one for you because the original page 8 was in error.
so under anticipated revenue,
Yeah, so that's the
You'll-
other thing that factors.
you'll see that third line down under this budget, you'll see $40,000. That's $40,000 of budget surplus
From last year.
year that's being rolled over into this budget to offset the assessment, the tax assessment to the member districts.
Sorry, where are you, Jason?
So if you look at page 8, under the anticipated revenue, if you go down 3 lines, you'll see fund balance, July, you carry that over, you'll see there's $40,000 in the 18-19 proposed budget.
Okay.
You'll also see that we carried $40,000 over last year as well, from our budget surplus from the previous year. We've done that, periodically over the last 7 years or so. Once again, to help offset the cost to the member districts.
Okay, I think I understand that. So I have a question about your operations and maintenance,
Which,
Yep, page number?
page number and line number?
page 13. And it's fuel oil, 5624.
Yep,
So you've estimated 20,000 for that. You had a $25,000 budget last year, but then you have one actual that shows a significantly smaller amount. So was that just a $4,754? So was that just an accounting error? Or is that truly
no,
like the expense, and should that?
that was not the full expense, and we reviewed that at
So that was
facilities.
an accounting error?
Yeah, I don't want to say it was an
Or
accounting
typo.
error. It is offset someplace else with a higher number, but there was more than $4,754 expended last year.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Not the actual number, but I can speak to the previous mindset and how that number was worked. Our previous business manager would watch the tank levels and try to time fuel purchases, so that he'd either he'd start the year with a full tank.
Okay.
And
It's
in
just
that
the way
particular
they
case,
fill.
if I'm not mistaken,
I understand.
They did not fill the tank.
the tank was full the end of the previous fiscal year. And most likely it was filled again at the beginning of the next fiscal year. So there really wasn't a huge expenditure. Once again, at that time we had we have a 10,000 gallon tank here at main campus, and then we have some smaller above ground tanks.
2 of them.
At main camp, or at North Campus. So what I believe is that we did not fill this tank that year, and that's what caused that. So,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, all right, I understand that. So just speaking about fuel, so I understand that you said you converted to natural gas at the North Campus
Yep.
Both
And here,
campuses.
both campuses.
and here too?
Yep.
Okay, so, and that savings is reflected in the budget? You're
Yes, so
anticipating savings?
we did not change the line this year until we got a good handle on it, because we were using both fuel oil and natural gas to start this year. So all of the money being expended both in FY18 and FY19 are under the fuel oil line. And so if you look at the 2 lines, the one that you referenced on page 13 at 5624, 25,000 is allocated for this year. Next year it's 20,000. There's a $5,000 drop in that because we're calculating it based on natural gas expenditures, not fuel oil expenditures, and we are confident that can be reduced by at least $5,000.
Yeah, and I see you did the same thing.
And we did the same thing
North Campus.
down below, right? Reduce that by $2,000.
Okay, so natural gas is a bridge fuel. You still have equipment that's probably aging, heating equipment, so what is your plan for the future?
So to switch to natural gas, we had to do quite a bit of work on our burners. They've been all replaced. Here at main campus, I don't believe we put dual fuel in North Campus, correct? That those are all natural gas?
Yep.
We have one burner here that is dual fuel, so it can run on oil. As far as going to a renewable heating source, we don't have any plans at this point.
I know, it's like a lot of...
It's not as easy to...
I know
it's not as easy to heat, with renewables. Yeah, you can do, a biomass, but, for what we're doing, I don't know that, the size of our facility would warrant that, and we haven't really investigated that.
Okay. So what are your capital improvement hopes for the upcoming year? Or you said you didn't know, but...
Well, we have current capital improvement projects that are in the works already to the tune of about $100,000. If those don't all get executed this year, some of those will be carried over. We're anticipating that in order to expand on some of those current capital improvements, that we would need additional resources. So we have needs within the technology arena, and we have needs within the security and safety arena within the building. We were fortunate enough this year to get a grant worth about $10,000 to be able to upgrade our some of our safety and security features, and we reported on that both at the board meeting, but at the building facilities committee meeting, and we're hoping to expand on both of those, and so that's what we're initially looking to allocate the $25,000 to, but it's still a little bit of a moving target, and we're hoping to solidify that as we get further along in this year in terms of those improvements.
One other thing to note, Laura, last year's budget was passed before we had a contract, and the health reimbursement accounts weren't in play at that point. So we needed to be able to fund that for this year, the year we're currently in. What we ended up doing, we moved about $50,000 of capital improvements, computers and software, out of the general fund and into the BRF fund, so that there was a set aside chunk of money still in the general fund, so that we could we could offset any of those health reimbursement expenses. We're hopeful that in this current budget, that money will be available so that we don't need to expend those BRF funds for that equipment, and if so, that it would go back into the general fund where it was originally planned. And then moving forward, as we voted on tonight, we'll be taking surplus and putting it into that health reimbursement account, so that won't be an issue with moving stuff back and forth.
So those are the 3 points that you were
Yeah.
talking about. 25,000 to the BRF fund, which is the lowest it's been in probably a decade. The health reimbursement getting 50,000 so that we can make sure that we can meet our obligations. And then the rest of that, 40,000 plus, being returned to the taxpayers and taxpayers.
Okay. So I know that you're gonna have schedule challenges next year, you don't know what that impact's gonna be on your
Right.
enrollment. I mean, we already have declining enrollment, it's all like.
So enrollment is the key, and one thing to think about here is we're being funded on past students, and we present to you a per pupil or per FTE expense. It's very possible, based on some of the numbers that we saw tonight, the spring semester of this year is up from where it was anticipated. It's up by
10 FTEs.
10 FTEs from where it was anticipated
In the fall.
a month ago. So that's a positive thing. And it's always hard when I'm sitting around talking to people about our budget, because it's great to say, hey, our overall budget's down by nearly 0.5%. But then you got to say, well, our per FTE spending's up 6.5%. And that's what sticks with people. Those aren't real students in the aspect of that's not number of students actually here. A lot of these FTEs are made up of 0.3s, 0.5s, 0.18s. So there's at any given semester we have 600 plus students.
About that, yeah, 575, something like that, yeah.
And so we could be in a situation where
Throughout the whole year. We have about 275, plus or minus a few more, any semester, meaning that we will service somewhere in the vicinity of 550, 575 for the year. So at our current numbers.
We have to look, with a high school, you can look at, who's leaving, your senior class. You can look at your 8th grade class coming in, and with relative accuracy, pick, the number of students that you're going to be serving that coming year. Yeah, there's some kids that are going to move. There's some kids that are coming in, but you can predict that. It's not as easy to do that in a career technical model. Hence the 6 semester average, so that you can, so it's intended to balance it out. But you could have situations where you have full classrooms that like he was showing in his presentation. We still can handle that in this budget. We're just not getting the state funding or the taxpayer funding for that. It's not, we have more students in the building. It's not going to increase. It's actually going to decrease that per pupil spending.
Right, I understand that. How do you decide the administrative load for the Career Center with a declining enrollment possible future?
Well, it's more than just that. It's it's all types of staffing, and it has to do with the facilities, and it has to do with the needs in terms of whether it's scheduling or services to kids. We have to run a full program, regardless of. And for example, we'd have to have a school counselor for whether it's 600 kids or whether it's 450 kids. To actually try to adjust that on a pro rata basis is very difficult.
I understand that, but what about administrative assistance?
Well, that depends on what you're doing, how many grants we're trying to acquire, how we are serving, whether it's student needs or whether it's community needs, whether it's outreach, whether it's publicity. There are a variety of things that go in, and you have to look at it from a task analysis standpoint, more there are for tasks to complete, the less likely it is that you can actually adjust those. And this being my first year, I'm trying to get my feet under me to be able to answer questions about programming, staffing across the center. So if I had been in a position that I've been in for 18 years, I could probably answer your question right away, because I would have a lot more data to draw on.
Okay,
But-
I'll give you time. Okay.
But you have to look at the tasks that are in play, and we have 2 facilities that we need to maintain.
Covered.
Here at main campus and North Campus. And we need to make sure that we have sufficient support in both locations.
We were talking about a general decrease in enrollment. I'm wondering how it looks school by school, sending school by sending school, how those numbers are in comparison to the overall demographics, the overall population swings. Is there some sort of data there you can provide us with, maybe zeroing in a little bit on that?
The only data that we have is data that would be available on the AOE website in terms of historical enrollments in each particular school. What I can say is that the trends in terms of students attending the Career Center are not necessarily linked specifically to trends in declining enrollments in any particular school. One of our schools has declined by over 100 students in the last, I'll say, 5 years, and yet their participation in career and technical education has actually increased.
So maybe could you tell us a little bit more about that? Why is it that despite a decrease in overall population, certain schools are continuing to send a level number of students or an average number of students to the Career Center, whereas other schools who are suffering the same kind of decrease in population are decreasing their numbers of enrollment to the center?
I think that that's a complex question, Lisa, and I don't have a single answer to why that's the case. Sometimes it's logistics, sometimes it's scheduling, sometimes it's personnel making recommendations, sometimes it's philosophy. There are a variety of things. Once again, I'm relatively new here. I know that there are people probably around this table and in the room that might have their own thoughts about that. But if you're asking me to provide an assessment, I think that the focus is on how much students are invited into the conversation about what their needs are and how well that can be coordinated between schools. Because otherwise you wouldn't see a trend where someone is actually declining in their students but sending us a record number of students, perhaps not a record number of FTEs, but more students accessing programs. So that's a really complicated question. And we have to look at things such as duplication. We have to look at things such as collaboration. More that schools try to duplicate things that are perhaps in the purview of the center, the less likely that we're going to get students and eventually FTEs. The more that schools are looking to us to fill the niche that we are supposed to be providing in terms of training, both academic, social, and employment, as well as technical skills, the more that I think those students will benefit from being able to come here. It could be logistics. Some schools have a 20-minute bus ride to get here. And figuring out how much time out of their schedule that's going to take might have implications. So for me to reduce that to one particular factor would be extremely difficult at this point in time, even if I had more information. But those are some of the things that we're working on right now. Good communication with our sending schools, good communication with our school counselors, good communication with administration regarding the collaboration on scheduling, and all of those things will favor a retention of the proportional amount of students that we would expect to attend career and technical education. The one thing that I'll throw out there is that we have statewide, I have done this comparison only with career and technical education. We are not the smallest career and technical education program in the state, but we have nearly the smallest FTEs. So I'm gonna put that as an overarching conundrum that I have to try to explore. Schools that are our size and that have feeding schools that send that have a feeding population, sounds like a fish frenzy.
Catchment area.
A catchment area population, thanks, that's approximately our size seems to be doing better. So we need to figure out and drill down into what are the factors that are contributing to that. But I am very pleased that we're up almost 11 FTEs from the fall when we had a projection that had us much lower. And I credit the staff for reaching out. I credit the students for telling their friends about the quality of the programming here. And I credit the counseling department with reaching out and saying what programs we still have available in which to receive students.
Let me clarify, let me be more specific. So I'm a Middlebury taxpayer, I'm also a teacher at the Career Center. We were given information from our guidance office about enrollment trends. And our Virgins and Mount Abe schools have maintained a pretty level number of FTEs to our school.
Oh, to this particular school.
To the
Not in our
Hannaford Career
district.
Center,
Yeah.
whereas the Middlebury High School FTEs are declining. I'm wondering what that's about. As a Middlebury taxpayer, I would like to know. And I hear what you're saying, it's complex.
Yep, I can't give you an answer.
I'm saying that, we are Addison County wide, yes, there's a dip in population. I'm just curious whether or not the board has discussed that or has an understanding about what that trend might be. Maybe you have nothing more to say on the subject. I'm just wanted to be very clear about my understanding of the situation.
Your numbers are correct. If you look at page 18
Right.
In our annual report, you'll see that Middlebury has dipped over the last, well, there was a spike back in the fall of 15, 16, a significant spike of, we'll say 20 students, or 20 FTEs. And then over the last 2 semesters, spring of 16, 17, and fall of 17, 18, you'll see roughly a 10 FTE drop for each of those semesters. What's causing that? We don't know. We know that we tend to see a drop in the spring. Why that is, I don't know. I've been told it's because that it has to do with how Middlebury is semesterized versus how the other 2 sending schools do it. That's not my forte. I can't really speak to that. It would, historically, we've been, 60% Middlebury students? And then, 2020 from the other 2 sending schools. Virgins' numbers are beefed up a little bit, mainly because we're also providing services there, so that, there's FTEs that the actual education is taking place in Virgins High School with programs that we're running from here with Career Center employees. So it takes the bus ride out of play. However, all of the kids coming from Mount Abe have a bus ride to deal with. And you're right, they're coming at steady numbers. The Middlebury students just need to walk down the hallway, and they're declining. I can't answer to why that is, but that's been a growing concern of the board for many years. We are a composite board. We've had conversations with our board members from Middlebury, or from ACSD now. And we're hoping that with continued collaboration and outreach, that we can change that trend. That's the hope. A lot of it comes down to duplication of services. I'm hoping that my conversation with with Dana last night, it was last night, in regards to the new computer program that we're running. One of my concerns was, this is great, as long as we're not creating a program that's already being implemented in the sending schools. Because it's a two-way street. We should be, we don't want to see the duplication of services on their end, nor should we be providing a duplication of what they're doing. Everything that we're doing should be complementary to what they're doing and vice versa. We have some upcoming challenges. I don't need to tell you with the change to IB. I don't think any of us really truly grasp what that's going to look like and what the impact of that is. My guess is our faculty has a much better, faculty and staff have a much better understanding than board members in general, because you're living it. So.
Thank you.
I know I didn't answer your question to the level you wanted.
No, but you were direct and I appreciate that. Thank you.
The other thing that we have seen is that the trend and drop of FTEs is directly correlated to the one school. Because Middlebury's drop in FTEs has resulted in our drop in FTEs overall.
So that the downside of our presentation tonight is the 6.5% increase in our FTE expenditures, caused by the drop of 6 FTEs. You do some math looking at, let's drop off 2 years. We drop off the 2 semesters from the year that's 3 years out. And just look at those 4. We're going to lose another 6 next year. If you presume that we stay, level with where we are now. So an increase is critical, because this is a trend. It's a trend that we're all concerned with. We're a school of choice. There's no, we don't have a captive audience. So it's about providing programs that are relevant to the student body.
Right,
I think we're doing
important
that.
school of choice when you have a 93% graduation rate, but only a 50% rate of kids continuing on to college. And those kids continuing on to college also needing a leg up as far as dual enrollment credits to get, to have a reduction in cost for that coming from low-income areas. I just want to point that out because I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. I hear you. I live it. But I wanted to point that out for the public.
We do wonderful things as far as I'm concerned. That's why all of these board members are here, because we believe in what we're doing. Kim?
I think to add to that too, we had this discussion in our board meeting earlier, is finding some creative ways to look at the sending school schedules. And Kelly expressed, really good headway in looking at all of their schedules so that it affords more students from the sending schools to come, no matter which school it is, as long as that's a coordination effort. I think from the Mount A perspective, it was always the issue for years. Somebody couldn't finish, for instance, your program in the spring because they had to fit some other credits in. With the affordability of dual enrollment, the affordability of programming interwoven to what exists here already, they don't have to go back to the sending school. So I think those are efforts that I've seen for 8 years now, off and on, needing to be a push. And I think that internally working with the other administrators has made such a difference that I see those trends shifting. And that's a very exciting thing for the students, because it's all about the students. That's what it's about.
So piggybacking on what you said, Kim, we have had several discussions about students who have some type of a glitch in their schedule that changes, in the shift of semesters. And we've been working really hard to see what we can do to overcome that. I had a great conversation with an administrator in one of our sending towns about the local types of requirements, not state requirements, which they can't waive, but local requirements that people could waive. But those local requirements may be causing an obstacle to students accessing the Career Center. And so the conversation shifted to how can we have a dialogue about helping those students to maybe meet those requirements, but not in a specific setting, like in a classroom, in their home sending school, which would then free up the opportunity for them to come and access a program of interest here. So those are the dialogues that we we need to have. And in addressing Lisa's question, I appreciate the fact that she was a little more specific about what the concern was, because as I've said and will continue to say, it's multifaceted from where I'm sitting. And all I know from my administrative experience, the better you coordinate with your sending schools, the better services you can offer to your student population, and that benefits everybody.
Any additional questions? Any questions on the budget?
No, thank you for the extra time. I know this is longer than typical, and I really appreciate the hard work of being on the board.
Well, we
I really
appreciate
do.
we appreciate you coming, because if you're not here asking questions, the viewers at home aren't going to draw what they need out of this presentation. So we appreciate the fact that you've taken the time, all of you taking the time to come to this annual meeting. And this budget hearing. So if there's no other questions, I'd like to adjourn this hearing, and we'll see you at the polls. Not tomorrow, not next week,
March 6th.
but March.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. So, Laura, one of the